Hello, my name is Özgün, and I'm primary school teacher for 8 years. And I'm also a member of Systems Thinking Association in Turkey. And today, Gökçen and I will share our experience in how IB, PYP, and systems thinking works together in our classrooms. Maybe I know some of you already an expert of PYP, but I would like to say something about IB for others maybe who have not an idea about it. And the IB programs focus on fostering critical thinking and building problem-solving skills while encouraging diversity, international mindedness, curiosity, and healthy appetite for learning and excellence. And the PYP offers an inquiry-based transdisciplinary curriculum framework that builds conceptual understanding. It's a student-centered approach to education and focuses on the development of the whole child as an inquirer, both in school and in the world beyond. We can catch the words that are compatible with the system thinking. And also IB is an international program that we apply in our school, and we also follow the national curriculum. There are primary objects that we should use in our lesson resolutely. We operate 6 units throughout the year, and the key concepts guide us. The key concepts guide us in processing them. We prepare our inquiry programs according to these themes. And it was meaningful for me to combine system thinking with the PYP curriculum because I can easily fit it into my lessons and benefit from it. The important point here is actually see similar aspects of both sides. And there are key concepts that complement each part of the iceberg. We use this concept to make understanding more visible, actually. In fact, every concept has a question that brings us together with system thinking tools. For instance, key concept change maps perfectly on patterns of behavior, the first layer of the iceberg, visual, or causation and connection on structure of the system layer. As part of the Sharing the Planet unit, we work with 3rd grade students on movie Lorax. The movie tells the story of a man who destroys trees and builds a factory and a town with no trees left. So we first watched the movie and tried to understand the changing situation. And we discussed the situations that affect the course of events with my students. And using our first concept change, we decided on what is changing and look at how it changed. So total tinids, that is the product made with trees in the movie, total tinids production increased gradually. So then my students said the situation affected the trees, and we also look at their change. Finally, we looked at the connection of two situations. Here we started to see and elaborate the cause and effect relationship. And I proposed a circle of relationships to show how strong connections are, and that one cause can actually have more than one effect. And while doing this, we tried to pay attention to aspects of relationships. This part was a little complicated for 3rd grade students. Actually, it's maybe 4th grades can be more easy for us, easier. But they tried to construct the logic. After a while, they said, this voice rose from the classroom. How many connections have occurred because of this great demand? So we created a loop. In this section, I helped them find the events that affected each other and gave them necessary tips. And at the same time, they used a template I had prepared from them beforehand, and I tried to make it themselves. These are examples of my students' work. And at the end of the lesson, we talk about our responsibilities, and they did some rubric and look at for an answer for the questions of what we can do, actually. And I observed the actions of the students themselves and learned that some of them wanted to plant trees when they go home, and there were who started watering the trees in our garden. And what we tried to reach was create awareness on both system and the individual, and I think we have been successful. And another experience, compost. Compost idea came in connection with our team again, and it was a study I was thinking about and even wanted to try, and I started planning with system thinking tools. And a project that lasted 6 weeks was created because that's all we have left until the school summer break. And first of all, I did pre-assessment to look at children's perspective and previous learning, and I did this using ladder of inference. And we wanted to see what children think about garbage, and everyone wrote the same situation under the ladder: I see bucket of garbage. So the result was surprising, because one student's assignment had the words "I'm running from the garbage" in capital letters. And actually what I wanted was to change this understanding. So first we read a book in the classroom about what compost is and discuss whether we could do it. And I shared the stage of the project, and we started collecting garbage. And at this stage, we collected a lot of waste from the house, children's house, and school cafeteria, and started build up a heap on school garden. And the next step was to measure the temperature of the heap every day and create the appropriate conditions. So we wrote the heat temperatures on a table every day, and we created a graphic at the end. And this story has been prepared to help them understand better how the transformation in the soil goes. And one of our high school students drew the pictures of this history. And for this story, we used system thinking tools and analyzed the change in soil. So we have created a stock flow diagram showing how transformation occurs. And students realized how the dead plant comes back to life and becomes usable. So finally, we made the final assessment and used the same ladder. The results were really gratifying because everyone had the same thing written on the paper. I make compost. So as a final step, we send the letters for parents and ask them, does your children's aspect change about garbage? Did they do anything about compost at home? So many said that they were separating the garbage for compost, and that this study was very useful. So as a result, we got sack of soil and we used it for growing new plants on our school garden for action. So it's Gökşen turn. Gökşen, do you want to continue from here?
I can share the screen if you want.
Okay.
Hi, let me introduce myself first. I'm Gökşen and I'm an English teacher in a PYP school called Düşüncesi Education Campus for 7 years. I mostly teach first and second grades. And in our school, we have a system called bilingual collaborative teaching. So we have 2 teachers in the classroom. One is the homeroom teacher and the other is me. So we are implementing the program of inquiry bilingually in the classroom. So I'm going to talk about the examples, some examples I use in my class, in my lessons, which combine the system thinking and PYP. So this is the first one. The first example is the bucket story. If you don't know anything about the story, I want to summarize it. How Full Is Your Bucket is a story about a boy called Felix, and his grandma tells him that there are invisible buckets over people's head, and with the things you do, good or bad, you can fill or dip your bucket as well as the other people's buckets. And the bucket helps Felix to understand how our behaviors affect us and the people around us. The main idea of the bucket story is to be a good person and spread the kindness around you. And also, as you know, in the very core of PYP, we have learner profiles. And the learner profiles provide us the long-term vision for the education and also offers key information about the learner's strengths and challenges and how they access and process the information, and also how they engage with the content and concepts, and how they express what they know and what they understand. At the end of the day, all those qualities embodied by the IB learner profile prepare the students to make exceptional contributions in their education and as well as in their life. So this story is a great way to help students understand to be a good person, spread the kindness idea, which goes along with the profiles actually, because we all want our students to have the learner profile and all those learner profiles, and with the ones they have or with the ones they haven't, they're going to have an impact on our future. So in the very early years of PYP, the story helps a lot for the students to understand the profiles better and how we combine the story and the system thinking tools. We read the story first, and there are lots of things about bucket filling and bucket dipping. And then we put a bucket into our classrooms and talk about the students, the examples from students, their own life. And they told us their friends or they did something nice. And also while sharing all those things, we always emphasize the learner profiles. When they say, for example, my friend helps me in the garden, and we say, oh, you're so caring. And also, we have the buckets. We always use it very close to the profiles because when you are using the buckets and when you are sharing the things in the bucket, it's nice to have the profiles very close so you can always refer to the profiles. Once first graders, I wasn't teaching that year, and they have the profile train on the top of the bucket. So when somebody shares something, they can move the name on the profile train. These are the examples from our classroom. So we read the story with the kids together, and then we listed the things, bucket dipping and bucket filling events in the story, and we put them in the stock and flow diagram first, because the bucket filling things are working as bucket stock part, and the bucket dipping things are working the flow part. And when they understand the increase and decrease concept, we put the things, because the amount of the water in Felix bucket is changing throughout the story. So we try to measure the bucket, the amount of the water in his bucket using the time graph, as you see. And at that time, my students, it was in the beginning of the year, we always use this activity in Who We Are units in the very beginning of the year, because it is easy to tell the students about the profiles, and this story goes along with mostly with the central idea of the Who We Are unit. So then they stuck the pictures because they didn't know how to read and write. So I gave them the pictures of the events in the story. So they put the story in order, and then they try to draw the time graph. So it's really nice idea, nice activity for teaching the students the tools, the system thinking tools, and with the very early age, with the young learners, we mostly use the time graph and stock and flow. They are easy to understand for them. And also this helps them, this book and all those activities help them to internalize the learner profiles, actually. And the second example I want to share with you is stories from graphs. As you know, we have 6 transdisciplinary teams in PYP. So I chose this example because it can be applicable for any teams or any central idea. It's a nice way to teach your students how to read a graph. So in this activity, I worked with 3rd and 4th grades. They weren't my students, by the way. I was teaching 2nd grade at that time. I went their lessons, I joined their lessons, and I told them how to read a graph. I showed them different kinds of graphs. I did this with 3rd and 4th grades at the same time. And when they understand the concept, when they can read the increases and decreases in the graph, we read Peter Reynolds-ish story with them. In the story, there's a boy called Raymond, and his happiness, the level of his happiness is increasing and decreasing throughout the story. So we try to make a time graph for his happiness. I did the same activity, the reading the graph and the book activity with 3rd and 4th grades at the same time. And then the things change at this point. With the 4th graders, I gave them a ready graph and I asked them to read the graph and write a story on it. So they need to see the increases and decreases during the time, and they need to write a story. So it was the Sharing the Planet unit. So some of the kids, they wrote about the animals because the central idea was about animals. But some of the kids, they didn't want to do something about the unit, and they wrote something different. For example, those boys, I think they wrote about the followers, the number of followers of a YouTuber. And then with the stories they wrote, I had another activity with the 3rd grades. 3rd grades was like the control group of the activity. I gave them the stories written by 4th graders, and I asked them to draw the time graph of the story. They worked with 2s and 3s, the group of 2 and 3, and they had different kinds of stories, but at the end of the day, they were doing the same, they were working on the same graph. It was a nice activity. As I told you before, you can use it in any team, any central idea. You can, if you want to, it's an easy way to tell the kids or teach the kids how to read a graph. And you can do something with the product of the students. So it was a nice activity. If you want to use the system thinking tools and the characteristic of the PYP, I think this is a great example. Thank you for listening. That's all I want to tell you today.
Can you continue the slides?
Okay.
Okay. So all activities were carried out using system thinking tools within the scope of PYP teams. So in this sense, it has been observed that it's a very good guide for developing inquiry and problem-solving skills. And it was observed that the students found the subjects more enjoyable by using system thinking tools. And it was evaluated that this approach supports permanent learning. So it has been shown through these activities that system thinking can be associated with teams and outcomes of primary years program of IB. So that's all. Thank you for your attention.